we are diving into how storytelling can transform your brand and unlocking the secret sauce to crafting irresistible brand stories that captivate your audience and help you sell with authenticity. We want you to be able to connect with your ideal clients like never before. And you'll be able to do that by the end of this training. So grab a seat, get comfortable, stay with us till the end. Let's do this thing. We're going to start with a story. And this is one I haven't shared before. I'm really excited to share this little piece of my history. My family comes from Finland, and we've actually been in the United States for generations, 5 generations by my count. So I don't speak Finnish. I haven't held on to a lot of the culture, unfortunately, but I do identify with some elements of it. And from the stories that I've been told, my ancestors lived a very humble life back in Finland. They scraped by doing what they could, and it was a very austere time. And for this reason, because it was such a hard life, they braved the journey to the United States, seeking a better future. For reasons unknown to me, they ended up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which feels and looks a lot like Finland, probably felt comforting and familiar to them. But life there was hard too. Most of my great grandparents worked in the copper mines of the Upper Peninsula. So they were pushed to their limits, put in danger pretty much every day, and worked really, really hard. And this is part of my history, right? This value of hard work, the stoicism that Finnish people have, it's called sisu, this unbreakable grit and determination against all odds to succeed. And one of my favorite parts of my family story is my maternal grandfather. I call him Papa. Papa was determined to have a better life for himself and for the rest of his family. I don't want to get into too many of his personal details, but he was working in the copper mines when he was like 12 and 13. And it's just not a place for a child. I can't imagine. He looked to education as his way out. So him and my maternal grandmother, Nana, pursued education together. They both graduated with degrees from Michigan Tech. And this legacy taught me the value of knowledge and strategy and using logic to create a better life for yourself. So I carried this with me throughout my childhood. I was always expected to go to college. I'm actually a graduate of that same University of Michigan Tech. And I held these things really close to my chest. Like I identified as a hardworking, stoic, logical, smart human. But as I ventured deeper into branding, I discovered the undeniable power of emotion, intuition, and storytelling. None of these came easy to me. I realized that creating genuine human connection is the true secret of building a really powerful brand. I have this piece of copper that I keep with me on my desk. It reminds me that I can do hard things. It reminds me of my family's determination to create a better life for themselves and for the ones that came after them. And kind of in an interesting way, it reminds me that I get to build on that legacy. I get to add this layer of emotion, of relationships, of authenticity to the work that I'm doing. And it's not diminishing my grandparents' insistence that I get a good education, but I'm just adding to that legacy as I grow. I was reading a psychological study that said kids who have a strong sense of their family's narrative are actually happier kids because they have a sense of context around their identity, around how they act. And brands too benefit from a really strong origin story. It shapes our own perception and connection with the brand. And it absolutely shapes the way that people connect that are in our audience or in our ideal clients. It gives purpose, belonging, and pride. As we navigate this lesson and we navigate the world of branding and entrepreneurship, let's embrace the power of our stories, the stories of our families, of our own journeys, and of these brands that we're creating. Because in them, we find our identity. We find and connect with our sense of purpose. And it's the key to connecting with other people. And you guys can read the slide. I'm so excited to share this with you. If you also want to connect with your ideal clients, if you also want to build an authentic legacy, building on what your family started. storytelling is a fantastic way to do that. And the more modern part of my story, it began in 2013, right after my first child was born, my son. And I was in a situation where I felt like I couldn't control my reality. I couldn't control my destiny. I was a military spouse at the time. I'm still married. Husband is still amazing. He is just since separated from the military. So we're not in that context anymore. But as a military spouse, it meant that we were going to be constantly moving every 2 to 3 years. And I struggled to find work that matched my skills and my passion for serving and for all of these different things that I have these pockets of obsessions and knowledge about branding and psychology and business and marketing and all of these things. And despite having my undergrad degree in marketing with my minor in psychology, I had worked for a Fortune 50 company, done really well. I was facing the harsh reality that military spouses face when they're looking for meaningful employment. And after 6 months of fruitless job searching at our first duty station, which was Clarksville, Tennessee, I finally resorted and took a contract bank teller position at this little local bank across the river and spent my days handing over stale cigarette stained dollar bills to my clientele, faking a Southern accent because I didn't want to be called a damn Yankee every single day. Deep down, I knew that I was meant for more. I knew that I wasn't working at my full potential. I just couldn't get other people to see that potential for whatever reason. From Tennessee, we moved to the middle of nowhere, Missouri. Like I said, I had just had my first child, and I realized that I needed to take matters into my own hands. So I started this online business. I chose myself. I was determined to create the life that I knew that I wanted. And this brand that I started back in my living room with a toddler on my lap has been an incredible journey. It's came with me as we moved from Missouri to Hawaii, to Naples, Italy, and now to North Carolina. And it wasn't an overnight success. I don't have that rags to riches in 6 months story. But as of right now, I've built a multi-six-figure business. I've taught thousands of students to build authentic brands through my online courses. And I've worked directly with hundreds of brands myself. I've celebrated $50,000 months. And I even had the freedom in 2019 to take an entire month off of business and to trek to Everest Base Camp with my husband, my sister-in-law, and one of their cousins. None of my current reality would have been possible without my brand. And now I'm passionate to help people like you to create a thriving business that allows you to live the life that you always imagined. Imagine a world where entrepreneurs like you possess the knowledge and expertise to make a profound impact on the lives of the people that you want to help. Each of you, I truly believe this to the depths of my soul, in your own unique way, holds the key to solving problems, inspiring change, and creating a brighter future. But I know sometimes that world-changing knowledge gets lost in the noise. It gets lost in our own insecurities, and the message doesn't reach the people that we're meant to reach. So that's where I come in. And that's where today's training comes in. My mission is to empower entrepreneurs like you to unlock your full potential of your expertise, share it with the world in a way that resonates with your audience. Let's unleash your unique story, your experiences, and your expertise to create a lasting impact. So today we're going to talk about some fascinating case studies, some science, and explore why storytelling works. And then after that, we're going to delve into the elements of great story. But I think where the magic is going to happen today is when you start to craft your own stories. I'm going to be sharing a hands-on exercise where you can craft either your brand origin story, if you want to work on that, or you could actually use it for any story that you want to tell. It could just be your next social media post or your next email that you send. We understand the world through our own perspective, and often we learn through the stories that we tell in our own minds. Let's remember or think about some of the places where storytelling plays a role in our everyday life. I think we've all had those moments when we're talking to kids, whether they're our own children or somebody else's. And one of the most powerful ways to connect with children is through storytelling. We use stories to teach important life lessons, to share values, and to simply have fun together. A good story helps kids grasp complex ideas, learn empathy, and ignite their imagination. It's really amazing to see kids' eyes light up with this beautiful understanding when they understand a story. And it's amazing how much we can all learn and grow together when we're the one that is telling that story to children. Another place where storytelling plays a really crucial role is in social situations. So when we're meeting new people or catching up with old friends, we often share stories from our life to build that connection, build the rapport. Can you imagine if we just talked in facts and figures when we're talking to our friends? How dry would that be? So by telling engaging and relatable stories, we create stronger bonds and make interactions with our friends more enjoyable. Those of us in entrepreneurship may have run into a situation where we're being interviewed, or maybe you've done that excruciating 6-month-long job hunt like I did in my past. And interviews are another place where telling stories helps us connect and help us communicate our value and our unique contribution that we've made in the past. In our own brains, we all have the wiring and the habit of telling ourselves stories about our own lives. It's like we use stories to make sense of everything that we're going through, the ups and the downs and the relationships and the choices we make and why we make them. These stories become kind of like a roadmap that guides our belief and our actions. So for example, if we see ourselves as fighters who overcome challenges and obstacles, we're more likely to keep pushing when things get tough. But on the other hand, if we're telling a story about how life is out to get us and how it's always bringing us down, it's really hard to stay motivated or hopeful. And at the end of the day, the stories that we tell ourselves shape the way that we see the world. And in turn, they influence the way that we live our lives. There's a lot of therapy practices where you literally rewrite your life story. And the profound cascading impact from that is that we're able to choose new actions, have new beliefs, because we see our past in a different light. Stories are incredibly powerful. And I hate to admit this, but when I was young, I had a terrible lead foot. And I was a really terrible storyteller whenever this situation happened to me. But there's many situations where we try to use storytelling to influence the outcome in our favor. One of those examples might be getting pulled over by a police person for speeding. And instead of just accepting the ticket, like I did back when I was, I don't know, I must have been 17, 18, we can try to tell a story to talk our way out of it. You could mention that you're on your way to your grandmother's house and you're in a hurry because you don't want her to worry about you, or you're speeding because you just received an urgent phone call and you're rushing to your friend's house to help them. So we can use storytelling to persuade. Stories have this incredible power to bring people together, to help us to understand each other and to create bonds that last a lifetime. They help us share our experiences, our dreams. It doesn't even have to be a story of something that has happened yet. It can be a story of the vision, and this storytelling structure that we'll explore today can help us communicate that and get people to belong to our movement. So when we tell stories, we're not just passing on information. We're not just entertaining. We're actually building bridges, forging connections, and creating a shared language that unites us all. A lot of science and a lot of research has gone into the power of storytelling. One of them is from neuroscience, Paul Zak. His studies demonstrated that when people are engaging in compelling stories, we're watching a movie, we're listening to a story, we're telling a story, our brains actually release oxytocin, which is the hormone that's responsible for fostering trust, empathy, and connection with others. No surprise there. It's sometimes known as like the cuddling hormone. And these are essential components for creating strong relationships. Stories help us remember. So according to a study conducted by the Stanford Graduate School of Business, stories are 22 times more memorable than facts alone. 22 times. And you might not remember this number, even though I'm emphasizing it heavily, but you probably are going to remember that I come from a family of copper miners, just the way that our brain works. This highlights the power of storytelling and branding, as people are more likely to remember and engage with brands that convey their message through stories. We've seen this countless times with a lot of the DTC, direct-to-consumer brands like Dollar Shave Club, because of emotion that we talked about yesterday, but then they're also telling a story about how frustrating it is to overpay for razors. Research by the Content Marketing Institute found that 92% of consumers actually want brands to create ads that feel like a story. It demonstrates that storytelling in branding is not just preferred, but expected by a vast majority of people. The days of better customer service and faster delivery and guaranteed to work, like none of these things reach people on this deeper level. Seth Godin has said, marketing is no longer about the stuff that we make, but the stories that we tell. So many of us are selling competitive or products that could be substituted with something else. So it's really a battle who is telling the better story. As many people know, Lego has been a beloved toy brand for generations. And a lot of its success can be attributed to the power of storytelling. They're a creator archetype brand. Their sets often come with detailed storylines that encourage children to immerse themselves into their imagination. The brand also invests in creating movies and TV shows and video games that expand on these stories, and vice versa, right? We can get Star Wars Lego kits or pirate Lego kits or Harry Potter Lego kits where we can play out our own stories using these characters that we know and love. And one memorable Lego campaign called Build the Future showcased a series of print ads that showed children constructing their dream careers using Lego blocks. And these ads not only captured the imagination of children and parents, but it reinforces Lego's core message of creativity, imagination, limitless possibilities. Airbnb, a brand that many of us are familiar with, they've revolutionized travel and hospitality by creating a platform for people to rent out their homes to travelers. And at the heart of Airbnb's brand is the concept of belonging, a girl or guy next door brand mixed with some explore. And the idea that staying in somebody's home can create a more authentic and meaningful travel experience. In 2014, Airbnb launched the Belong Anywhere campaign. It featured real stories from Airbnb hosts and guests. And one notable story showcased a Airbnb host whose name was Shell, who rented out her treehouse to a couple for their honeymoon. And it showed how Shell went above and beyond to create this magical experience for the newlyweds with fairy lights, a welcome message, a scrapbook of memories. This story doesn't just highlight the unique accommodations that are available through Airbnb, but it emphasizes the human connections and the memorable experiences that people can find when they engage with this brand. Another memorable ad campaign comes from outdoor clothing and gear brand Patagonia. So Patagonia has been committed to the environment, to conservation, sustainability. Their mission statement is literally, we're in business to save our home planet. And in 2011, they launched a famous ad campaign called Don't Buy This Jacket, which urged consumers to think twice about buying new products and to consider their own environmental impact. This bold, unexpected message was accompanied with stories of Patagonia's own efforts to reduce waste, to recycle materials, and to reduce their environmental footprint. It generated a ton of media attention, sparked a lot of conversation, and it all started from those stories. So now that we've established that storytelling is important, it works, it's scientifically proven, we can see it in our own lives that it's playing a role. How can we tell really great stories? What are the elements that go into the recipe of a great story? There's several. Right after this, we're going to put some of this to work and we're going to create our own story. Good stories have as many of these elements as possible. And as you think back and remember some of the stories that I've already told during this training, think about some of the elements that are present here, how they showed up in my stories. So one of them is relatability. Relatability happens when we connect on a kind of this universal human level. And one of the best ways to do this is, instead of just talking about what happened, which can be wildly different from person to person, chances are you probably haven't trekked to Everest Base Camp, but you could probably identify with the emotion of freedom, of having agency to do what you want. So grounding your story in emotion is a really fantastic way to make the story relatable, even if the context isn't as relatable. So think about how you were feeling, not just what happened. Authenticity is really important. We want to be honest and be true. Humans are smart, and we all have a very sophisticated system in our brain that helps us identify when people are lying, being untrue, using a lot of hyperbole in their messaging. So avoid the negative feelings that can happen when somebody is telling a tall tale by just telling the truth. We don't all need to be billionaires to be inspirational. We can share our own growth, our own story. So real life examples, customer testimonials, case studies, all of these are really great places to find stories. We want to add in emotional appeal. So identify what emotions you want your brand story to elicit, and then weave that type of language into the story. One of the things that I had to learn when I was learning how to tell stories better and more often in my brand is to have a clear narrative structure. We want to establish a setting, introduce a challenge or a conflict or tension, and then present a resolution. We're going to practice that in just a moment. It's really powerful to use imagery or metaphors. So talking about your expertise like a beacon of light that's attracting your ideal clients, or chiseling away all of the masks that we wear when we present ourselves to our ideal clients. Using this type of language helps people connect on more of the symbolic emotional level. Great stories are often simple and easy to understand. My husband and I always joke around that like 3/4 of the way through a movie, when all hell is breaking loose and it seems like every hope is lost, we're like, okay, we just have to wait and get through this part. It's going to get better. And 99.9% of the time it does, because that's a simple story structure that's been proven to work. And that pit of despair is an important part of establishing emotion in the story. And then as a brand, it's really important that the stories that you tell are consistent with your brand identity and your values. I was actually reading, I think it was Branding Between the Ears by Sandy Dial, which I interviewed the author on my podcast, The Brand Gravity Show. Fantastic episode. One of the things that he found was it's actually not just story and just emotion that drives results for a brand. The story must be consistent with what you're trying to communicate. I think unrelated stories have some value, like they create this human connection. So if I tell you about, I don't know, making my favorite lunch, I can connect with you on just like this human level. But if I want to tell a story that's related to my brand, I want to be reinforcing some of my brand values. So I want to be talking about how branding helps shape your reality. Notice that's the story that I told about how literally building this brand helped me shape my reality. I also tell stories about how we want to dream big and paint a vivid picture of the future, of our vision of what our brand can accomplish. I also like to tell stories about my value of flexibility, because I hate doing what I call the business dishes. I hate doing the same exact thing every single day and having the same exact schedule every day. So I prioritize flexibility in my structure and in my business. So I tell stories related to that. Identify your values and then tell stories that illustrate. And then on a more practical level, sourcing stories was a challenge for me when I first got started in branding. I didn't consider myself a natural storyteller. I needed a way to find more stories. I needed to practice writing stories. And that may be true for you as well. Some practical tips are to keep an eye out and just make observations of your life. I like to jot them down in the notes in my phone, and I can use those later to prompt when I'm actually sitting down and writing. And it can be small little moments. It can be an epiphany or aha moment or a lesson that you learned from something obscure. Like you just have this like wave of gratitude walking through a forest path, and it makes you realize something. Just take out the phone, jot it down really quick, and get back to the moment. I also like to, as I'm scrolling through social media, especially if any post makes me take action, so it makes me like click the expand or click through to whatever they're talking about, I almost always save those so that I can refer back and kind of reverse engineer. It's never about copying, but it's about gaining inspiration and taking notice of the times when you as the consumer respond to some type of messaging. One of the best things that I ever did when I was practicing the storytelling habit and these storytelling skills is to institute a daily writing habit. Now, this didn't last forever and ever and ever, but for a good period of say like 3 months, I sat down and I would write. Maybe it was 10 minutes, set a timer, 10 minutes in the morning, I would write. And sometimes I would literally start my daily writing prompt with, I don't feel like writing. This is going to be terrible. What should I write about today? What is true? What needs to be said? And then I'd remember something and I'd launch into writing just a quick page of the story. And looking back now, that content is invaluable. It's this like little snippet of time that I would have forgotten if I didn't capture it. So a daily writing habit is a really fantastic way to help prompt stories. And a little secret, a little behind the scenes, just between us, I do have a treasure trove of storytelling prompts, ideas, and training tucked away inside of my branding program. So if you have access to your archetype, there's 2 sections where I talk about both famous stories that you can emulate, that you can use to inspire your own stories, and then also storytelling prompts that are specific to the archetypes. Similarly, in the Brand Clarity Collective, there's an entire section that's dedicated to the content of your brand to increase demand for your brand. So today's exercise could take you a long time if you let it, but I'd like to encourage you to play with making this as short and as imperfect as possible. There's a really basic storytelling structure that works really well. And we could, break out a whole 16-step hero's journey from Joseph Campbell to tell a story, or we could simplify it so that it's more usable for us. And this is the narrative structure that I use whenever I'm telling any story. I'd like to challenge you to write a story for your brand that is short. It could be as short as 3 sentences. You could set the scene with 1 sentence. You could introduce a conflict with the second sentence, and you could tell the resolution with the 3rd sentence. Or if you have a little bit more time, you can expand that out to a couple sentences each. Open up either your phone notes or a document on your computer, or if you are like me and you need pen and paper to be able to make your brain work, then do that. And we'll be using this 3-act structure to create a basic outline of your brand story. And this is the 3 parts of an effective narrative structure. First, we need to introduce the setup. We have to set the context. During the scene section, we're introducing the main characters of your brand story. So that might be the founder, maybe that's probably you, the brand, or you could even tell a story about one of your first customers as your brand origin story. Establish the setting. So who, where, and the setting can be a location, it could be an industry, it could be a market. Set that. And then briefly describe the initial situation as it stands. So like, where are we joining this character? What is happening? Part 2 is to introduce conflict. So we want to describe some tension, some challenge that is preventing our main character from getting what they want, or they recognize some injustice in the world. Consider the obstacles that have come into your life that have prevented you from getting what you want. And then our final stage is resolution. So describe how the main character, maybe it's you, ultimately overcomes this challenge and solves the problem. You want to have this strong before and after sequence that's happening. Stories are all about change at the crux of them. They describe a change that happens. If nothing changes, there's not a great story. And I'm going to share 2 examples to help make this more clear. I've shared a lot of examples as we've been going through this training, but let's just make it crystal clear with this 3-part narrative structure. So Jane loves her morning coffee routine. The aroma of the freshly ground beans in her quiet kitchen. It is just her favorite time of the day where she cherishes stillness. However, one morning she opens up her cabinet, reaches in, and realizes that her favorite coffee mug, which was a gift from her late grandmother, was missing. She panics, starts looking all over the house. As she's tearing through the house, trying to find this very sentimental coffee mug that it's a crucial piece of her morning routine, she finds her daughter playing with the mug and pretending to sip coffee out of it. So she realizes that her daughter just wanted to share in this morning ritual routine that she saw her mother doing so many times before. So she grabbed another cup of coffee and shared this morning ritual with her daughter. I use this narrative structure when I talk about my own origin story. I was newlywed. I was in a new location. I was living in Tennessee, and I couldn't find a job that valued all of my high achieving, overachiever skills and talents. And I ended up working in a minimum wage job at a local bank and faking a Southern accent. I realized not only was I not sharing my gifts with the world, I was trying to pretend that I was somebody else. And it took building a brand and choosing myself to ultimately be able to help people in the way that I know I was uniquely born and shaped to help. So scene, conflict, resolution. I cannot wait to read your stories. Your story is your brand superpower. It's what sets you apart from your competition, connects you with your audience on a deeper level, creates a lasting impact in hearts and minds. Great stories are memorable, relatable, and transformative. And as entrepreneurs, we have a unique ability to create meaningful change in the world, one story at a time. The world is waiting for your story, and the time to share it is now. I challenge you to take these lessons that you've learned today, apply them to your brand, craft a captivating story that resonates with your audience and inspires them to join you on your journey. It's not just a marketing tool, it's an expression of your purpose, of your passion, and your legacy. If you haven't connected yet, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Pinterest, YouTube, wherever you hang out, I also hang out. And then, as always, build your brand on truth, not trends.